Right, so I'm going to go through some examples first. But firstly, I just want to talk about there are two parts to managing your anxiety, and I'm going to tell you and show you how this applies. So firstly is physiologically, right? So when you meditate, you cook, you clean, you focus on a task that's mindful. You are literally focusing on this task. You're going to walk in nature, you listen to a podcast, you're doing nothing else but focusing on this task. Your thoughts aren't flying everywhere, right? And that's why you feel so much better after you clean, for example. Basically, everyone has a baseline anxiety. So say your baseline anxiety is 60%, right? You're sitting at 60% every day. If something triggers your anxiety at 80%, it's going to take 20% to trigger that anxiety, right? You've only got that little bit of room for something in the environment to trigger your anxiety. If your baseline anxiety is 40%, so it's a lot lower, you've got a 40% to get triggered in the environment, right? So if you lower your baseline anxiety, the neurons fire in your brain, like your excessive thoughts, you're thinking, by practicing mindfulness activities, it's going to take a lot more to trigger your anxiety in the environment. And this is consistency as well. It's not just like one meditation session is going to like lower your baseline anxiety, but this is going to lower your anxiety before you've even entered a triggering anxiety provoking situation, right? So it's going to take a lot more to trigger your anxiety. So that's just a physiological side. That's something you can do to help manage your anxiety before you've even done all the thoughts and the rationalizing, which is what we're going to do today. So then the second part to managing anxiety is psychologically, right? There's three parts. I'm going to quickly briefly go through these, and then I'm going to go through an example, and then we're going to apply it to yours, and hopefully you'll actually understand how to do it. I just want a heads up that this is all in my journal. Every single step, it's got all the information that's on these slides in my journal, and it's got loads of templates. So anytime you feel anxious, you can just write them down. So basically there's three parts, right? Firstly, I want you to all just think about what causes your anxiety, right? What is it in life? Is it social? Is it relationship? Is it future? Is it like something to do with like things not going your way, your routine doesn't go your way, you haven't worked out, you get anxiety, you feel bad, anything that gives you anxiety? I want you to think about this now so you can kind of go through this example in your head. So firstly, you've got to identify that this anxiety is irrational, right? Oh, it says I need a meeting passcode. Oh god. Sorry. Someone's trying to get in. How do I do this? I don't know how to do this. Meeting info, is that right? Password. No. Oh. 856606. Oh gosh. So unorganized. I don't know if this person's in as well. Okay, so I want you to firstly identify that this thing is irrational, right? I know it's hard. You believe everything that your brain tells you, right? You have anxiety. You're like, so for me, for example, when I had my eating disorder, I was like, right, I'm fat. I'm fat. That's it. Like, I believed it so much. But you need to take a step back and realize that this thought you're having is not totally true. You are literally focusing on the negative side. You haven't stated the whole truth, right? So I want you to acknowledge, and I know it's hard and sometimes because you might believe that you are right, that this is potentially quite irrational, catastrophic, and quite negative. Okay, once you've done that, secondly, you have to rationalize these thoughts. So I want you to firstly recognise that you are quite prone to anxiety, so you are going to blow thoughts up. You are going to take something that's like anxiety provoking and you're going to blow it up because you are prone to anxiety and you're prone to feeling worried and overthinking and stuff like that. But then I want you to ask yourself, what is the evidence for this anxiety that you have? Has something drastically happened in the environment? So for example, me, I struggle with fear of failure, right? I struggle with future anxiety. It's got a lot better since I've been working on it. I'm working on my therapist. I'm going to go through that example in a bit. And she goes to me, my therapist says, is there a physical threat in the environment? Bearing in mind, anxiety is about the future. It hasn't even happened yet. Is there a physical threat in the environment that has come up to you and said, do you know what? You're going to fail. That's not going to work out for you. You're not going to get what you want. No, it's all generated by my thoughts. The threat is generated in my head by myself. I've created this threat by myself, right? And then secondly, have you stated the whole truth? Is everything you're saying the whole truth, or is it just part of it? So for example, me, I've only stated the negative outcome, the failure, the what if it doesn't work out. I haven't stated, okay, what about if it does work out? What about if I do get what I achieve? What about if I fail but then I redirect and I get somewhere even better? And then thirdly, I don't know why I put number 1. The third part is add some self-compassion. So you can rationalize thoughts as much as you want, but if you're not adding self-compassion, there's literally no point. You've got to add this self-compassion, which is where you're being kind to yourself. What would your friends say? For example, for me to say to myself, I'm scared of failing, I know it's not going to work out, like, I don't believe that I'll get there, I mean, I don't have these thoughts as extreme anymore at all. That's the sort of thing like last year I used to think. How horrible is that? Like, I would never say that to my friend, you know? So it is about showing some compassion to yourself as well, and thinking, you know, what would your friends say? Oh, for goodness sake, it still says incorrect. 2 people can't join. Guys, what do? I don't know. Do I just... Oh, God. I was sending the wrong passcode, that's why. That's not good, is it? By the way, everyone, just want to say I really appreciate you all joining. It actually means such a lot. I know these sessions are free and I'm just doing it in my own time. But also, I'll send anyone the slides who wants the slides after. And I've also got a little discount code for you at the end for my journals if you want to journal, you know. If you want to buy a journal, why not? So yeah, you add some self-compassion. Right, I'm going to go through the examples. Okay, so relationship anxiety, you have to bear with me. Right, so for example, and then by the way, after I've given these 3 examples, we're going to do yours, and this is where you'll start writing, and just hopefully you've learned how to do it. So relationship anxiety, right, your boyfriend stares at women, he comments about other women, right? I want you to remove your boy. So you're in an event, right, and your boyfriend said something, or he's looking at women or whatever, something inappropriate. I want you to now remove your boyfriend from the scenario. Right, he's not there, you're at this event on your own with your friends. If you saw the girl that he was saying he's got anxiety, just commenting about and, you know, looking at or something, would that girl give you anxiety if your boyfriend wasn't there, right? If the answer is yes, that is a you problem. That's an insecurity problem where you are comparing yourself to a girl that you deem less than yourself, right? Does that make sense? So the anxiety is coming from within, like, you, regardless if your boyfriend's there, you get anxiety because you feel insecure within yourself. Secondly, right, so if the answer is yes, then that's a you problem, and that's something you need to sort out with your anxiety and your insecurities and build your self-worth and that sort of stuff. But if the answer is no, and if your boyfriend wasn't there, you wouldn't get anxiety, then you put your boyfriend back in the scenario, then it's his behaviour that's wrong, right? Because if you don't get anxiety anyway, then it's clearly his behaviour that's causing the anxiety. So, for example, that he is looking at girls, and that is wrong. So you separate your anxiety. It's not you can't put that on you, that's not your fault, because if he wasn't there, you wouldn't get anxiety, right? So you separate your anxiety from the behaviour. So his behaviour is therefore wrong, and then you can rationalise his behaviour. So you can say stuff like, okay, he's immature, he doesn't know how to behave in a relationship, he doesn't know how to control himself, and he needs his friends to tell him how to behave. Anxiety will be dissipated because you've taken the problem off of you. It's not your problem, it's his problem, and that's where you separate the behaviour from the anxiety. So the second example, social anxiety, something I've never experienced, fortunately, so it's not really easy for me to explain, but I'm going to apply the same concept to social anxiety. So for example, you go to an event and you are like, oh, people like saying things about me, they're looking at me, they don't like me, all these irrational thoughts that you again have generated in your head. It's not true, you don't know if it's true, it's not entirely true. So for example, so you've got these thoughts in your head. If someone is actually doing something to give you anxiety, so like they're ignoring you, they are they've said something nasty, they're leaving you out, they're talking about you in front of you or whatever, they're like putting you down, then that's on them, that's not on you. The reason you have anxiety, that's not your fault, that's on them, and you can rationalize their behavior. Like, okay, well, that says a lot more about them. Obviously they have insecurities, they're clearly struggling with something deep rooted that is not for me to worry about, and it doesn't mean anything about myself. However, if you have these thoughts and they are they're not doing anything wrong, then that's your anxiety and that's what you need to work on. And this is what we're going to work on in a minute, but it's just recognizing, and it's really helped me, it's just recognizing what's a bad behavior of someone else or something in the environment versus what's actually my anxiety. And then the future and fear of failure, I'm going to go through that with all the steps now that you'll write out for your example. Okay, so, oh gosh, they're not working. Okay, too far into it now. So for the fear of failure one, this is exactly what my therapist said to me, right? I want you to first write down these 3 headings. So if you get a piece of paper, write down number 1, and then in the middle, number 2, and then at the bottom, we'll write down number 3. Don't write down this example. I'm going to talk through this example, but then we're going to do yours after this. So for me, my thoughts, she went, okay, I want you to recognize what sort of thoughts you're having that are quite anxiety provoking, they're quite negative. What are those thoughts? And this is so hard because every day you have thousands, hundreds of thousands of thoughts flying around your head every single day, and it's hard to remember them, right? They just pass, they just pass. And that just goes to show as well that thoughts aren't actually real. So for me, I said that I'm not the kind of person who'd be able to achieve that. I won't be successful. I won't make it. I'm not good enough. So I'd write down these things. Okay, secondly, rationalize those thoughts. So firstly, you've got to recognize that these are irrational thoughts and they're catastrophized because I have anxiety, right? I'm prone to anxiety, so my anxious brain is going to take that thought and it's going to blow it up. Okay, thirdly, we can't predict the future. She said to me, she's like, you can't predict the future, so why are you worrying about it? She said it's 50-50 outcome. You could fail and redirect, or you could succeed, but you don't know, so why are you only predicting the negative outcome? It's not fair for you to only predict the negative ones, which is what the anxious brain will do. What about if it does work out? And secondly, you can kind of say something like, do you know what? I am actually on track. I'm doing so much for my age. This lack of self-belief is generated by my limiting beliefs. I have no evidence at all that I cannot do it because I haven't failed yet. So what's the evidence that I can't do it, right? There's none. It's generated in my head, not in the environment. Remember that. Someone's not coming up to me and going, do you know what? I've taken all the money out of your account. You're now going to be homeless. No one's coming up to me and saying that. Everything is in my head. I haven't failed yet. Do you know what I mean? I'm anticipating failing. I haven't done it yet. It's not going to happen. And lastly is to add some self-compassion. So what would your friend say? I'd never say to my friend, I'd never be like, oh, you're never going to make it. You're going to fail. It's so horrible, isn't it? So for example, I'm just going to say, do you know what? I quite often fall into this trap of not being kind to myself and being extremely hard on myself and being overly harsh. I've done a lot lately. I'm doing well. It's common for me to believe that I'm always going to fail, but that's also not fair on myself. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to be kind to myself, do my best. You talk kindly to yourself. What would your mum say to you? What would your best friend say to you? Right. All my talking is done. I hope you feel, I hope you understand that number 1, firstly, separate the anxiety from the behaviour so you know if it's something in the environment and it's their behaviour versus if it's your anxiety, you need to sort it out. And then the 3 steps to manage anxiety. Oh, that's good, isn't it? Right, we're going to do yours. Anyway, oh gosh. There we go. So I want you to write down the number 1, identify the irrational negative thoughts. So I want you to think about what thoughts you have. So whatever gives you anxiety, whether it's, it could be anything. It could be obviously I used to have a lot of anxiety around food and eating and stuff like that. And it could be I used to think, oh my God, if I eat that, I'm going to be fat. I feel bad for eating that. I used to worry about putting on weight, So it could be anything. It could be the examples I've said. It could be whatever gives you personally anxiety. I want you to think of the sort of thoughts you are saying to yourself and write them down. And this is hard because it requires you to reflect on thoughts that have already passed. But when you think of this thing that gives you anxiety, you probably will get, and it might be quite uncomfortable, but everything needed to grow is uncomfortable, right? Just write down the thoughts just write down a few thoughts. I need to just breathe a second. I've just spoken so much. But yeah. It is hard to think of the thoughts. I'm just going to shut up for a minute so you can actually think. Gosh, I'm such a talker. Dun, 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 dun. So I hope you've got a few thoughts. Write down as little or as many as you want. There might be one thought that stands out to you and it hurts, it makes you feel uncomfortable. So secondly, is I want you to rationalise these thoughts. In fact, you know what? Where's the ones with the questions on? That you can actually just answer the questions. Here we go. So I want you to answer these sorts of questions. You can think of any other questions, rationalise it. So you got to think, you've got your anxious brain, which is going to blow everything up, and then you've got your rational, logical brain, which is, it's so hard to believe this brain when your anxious brain is telling you this is what's true, but you need to think of the whole truth. Obviously your anxious thoughts are only part of the whole truth, right? So I want you to recognize that these are anxious thoughts and that you are prone to anxiety. So you could put something like, do you know what, I do have anxiety, or you don't even need to label yourself with anxiety if you don't want to. You can say, I am prone to thinking with quite anxious thoughts. So firstly, I need to recognize that they're not going to be entirely true, even if I don't believe that, because you've got to think, what would your friend say to you in this situation? She probably would say that's not actually true, it's not entirely true at least. And then I want you to ask yourself, what is the evidence? For these anxious thoughts, can you think of any hard evidence that has happened that supports your anxiety? And because anxiety is generated by thoughts, it's hard to find evidence for these thoughts that are made up. So I want you to think, what is the actual evidence? So for me, a fear of failure, I've actually had no evidence. I've failed nothing really, drastically, that's changed my life in a different direction. I haven't failed at what I'm trying to achieve at the moment. I'm just building on it. So really, there's actually no evidence that I'm going to fail. Really. Be true with yourself. And then I want you to ask yourself, is there a physical threat, or is this threat generated by your thoughts? So has something happened to you in the environment that's threatened this, whatever you're anxious about, or is the threat generated from your thoughts? So for me, nothing's come up to me and told me that I'm going to fail, and it's going to take something away from me that's caused me to fail. Nothing's happened in the environment. It's literally just created in my head. For example, the whole eating thing. What's the threat? What is the actual threat of eating a bit more one day? There's not really a threat. You've got to think actual rationally. If you think the bigger picture, you think the whole year, that one day of overeating or whatever, there's no actual threat. I'm not gonna die. I'm still a good person. It doesn't change me as a person. It doesn't change my worth. It doesn't change my value. It's just a potential off day, whatever you want to call it. And I want you to be honest with yourself. Is your anxious thoughts, are they the whole truth? Is it the whole truth, or is it just part of the truth? So for the fear of failure thing, I've only stated half the truth. I've only stated the negative outcome. I haven't stated the whole truth. For the social anxiety thing, it's not the whole truth that people don't like you, because you've got people that do like you. And also you haven't actually got evidence that people don't like you unless someone's come up to you and said, I don't like you, So again, generated in your head. What was the other example? I can't remember. Relationship. So the whole truth is that you don't actually know what your partner's thinking. Doesn't mean they actually want that person that they're looking at. It doesn't mean anything about you as a person. It doesn't mean that he's going to break up with you and go and cheat on you. It doesn't, that's not the whole truth. This is really important to state the whole truth. Okay, ignore this last one because that goes into this self-compassion bit. So just write down some of those sorts of prompts, answers to those prompts. Do you know what? I've recorded this whole session. I think I'm just going to upload it to my YouTube because I'm going to give it to those people that missed out. And if you ever want to come back, and if you want to buy a journal and go through these steps in my journal, then you can listen to the video at the same time. Or if you don't want to buy a journal, you can just write it on paper and listen to the video at the same time. Okay, I'm just going to be a minute, because I need you to think about this properly, because rationalization is hard when you believe your anxious brain so much, Remind me to just go over overthinking as well briefly at the end, because I've got a few points about that, but I haven't got it on this. But yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that everyone's joined this week, and then people couldn't join. Password issues. Right. I have to kind of estimate when people have finished. Just give it like a couple more seconds. Okay, so the third step after you've done that, obviously you can come back and do this again, you can add to it or whatever. And also when you're on your own, obviously this is me talking to you, but when you actually have anxiety, you should do this. But also, I just need to say something else as well. My therapist was like, when I used to have anxiety about something, which I don't really want to go into, she was like, before you know that anxiety is going to come, so before a specific event that used to give me anxiety, right? She was like, you need to prepare a few days before. Like, she was like, do your mindfulness, get your body, your nervous system, get your baseline anxiety down as low as possible, sets you up so when you go to the event, it doesn't take as much to be triggered, and then you can use these thoughts in the scenario. So you've got your low anxiety levels, and then you've got these thoughts ready, you wrote it down in your journal, you know exactly what these thoughts are that you've got to tell yourself all the time. So when you go to this event, you've got low anxiety baseline and you're telling yourself these thoughts, you are less likely to get anxiety, and you're less, or even if you get anxiety, it's going to be lessened. And over time, consistency over time, I promise you it will work. You'll manage your anxiety. This is about managing your anxiety in the best possible way. So thirdly is add some self-compassion. So I want you to ask yourself, like, is what you're saying to yourself, so those anxious thoughts you have about yourself, is that fair? Like, for example, social anxiety, is it fair to say that people don't like me? Oh my gosh, people won't like me, people don't like how I talk, I wonder what people are thinking of me. Like, would you say that to your friends? Probably not, you know? Like, I want you to think, like, is it actually fair, or are you actually being quite harsh on yourself? So for example, you could write something like, do you know what, I am judging myself in a way that is quite harsh. I wouldn't say this to my friend. I want to look to be kinder to myself. And I can't even think properly. Let me look at my book. You got to think what a friend. I've always found self-compassion is so hard, but self-compassion is so key at the same time. So it's not fair myself to focus on the negatives and to tell myself that I'm not doing well, or that people don't like me, or that I'm fat, or that I'm, you know, this, that, the other, whatever you have anxiety about. And then I want you to actually just write a sentence at the end and be like, do you know what, this is what I am doing, or this is who I am. So for me, the fear of failure one, do you know what, I am doing so well at the moment, I've achieved this, this and this, I'm putting effort in every day, I'm being consistent, I'm doing really well. And I want you to just acknowledge, so if it was the social anxiety, you could be like, do you know what, I am a good person, I have people who love me, I have people who support me, it doesn't matter what everybody thinks, I accept that not everybody will like me, and that's absolutely okay. Or if it was the weight one, or like the eating one, you could say something like, do you know what, like, some days I don't work out, some days I do, and that's fine, I'm human, that's absolutely normal, and that's absolutely okay. Some days it's not going to be perfect because I strive for progress and not perfection. It doesn't make myself a bad person. I'm a good person, it doesn't change my value, it doesn't change my worth, it doesn't change how people see me and people love me, you know, that sort of thing. Just write a sentence at the end that actually is like, turn it around back on yourself, like, get your anxious thoughts, smash them off, and put a, do you know what, actually, this is what my compassionate brain would tell me in this situation. And breathe. So yeah, I'm just gonna let you, it's a couple minutes to do that. Oh, I wish I had a podcast like this, would be cool, wouldn't it? Record this on a podcast. One day, I will have a podcast. Yeah, podcast. Yeah, so that's the 3 steps. So you obviously got your physiological things, and this is why even like this morning I got up and I made my bed and I got ready for the day, and I journaled, and just that 30 minutes of me time calmed me down. Like, I'm in such a clear headspace for the day. I've got a clean environment around me, I feel clean, I feel good in myself, my mind feels clean because I've journaled, and I'm ready to start the day, you know. So mindfulness, anything mindfulness you can do, even if you time lapse yourself cleaning, and put some music on in the background, like, you're being mindful, you're focusing on tasks, you're not on your phone, you're not getting distracted, like, you feel so much better, I promise you. Like, you'll feel so good. I love cleaning. Yeah. So that's the 3 steps anyway. I hope that makes sense. Overthinking is kind of the same sort of thing, because your overthinking is probably your anxiety talking to you. So again, you can do this, but with the overthinking thing, sometimes one thing that I've seen and one thing that I've done is when I overthink something in the moment, you know, at night when everything feels worse, right? This will finish in a couple minutes. You know, at night when everything feels worse and you overthink the shit out of your life, like you overthink everything. You wake up in the morning, you're like, oh my God, what was I worried about? If you actually, so for me, when I used to go to my therapist and I tell her what I've been thinking about, when I said it to her, I felt stupid, right? And that's when you know you're overthinking. Because if you can say it to someone and like, you like, when you start talking, you're like, oh my God, this sounds really weird. Like, not as in like you're weird, but just like, okay, I've really overthought here. Like, this is just too much overthinking. Equally, you can do it writing down. Right, when you overthink, just write it down. Just write really quick. Like, let your subconscious mind take your hand away. Like, write so quick. And then as you start to write, if it feels weird and it feels odd and you're like, hold on a minute, this actually isn't true, you'll know you're overthinking. And then another tip for overthink, so that's one thing you can do just to kind of, it actually just stops you overthinking, because you're like, hold on a minute, that's why I'm overthinking this, like that's just stupid. And secondly is focus. So you're overthinking, I like to write down, like when I'm overthinking things, like if I've got so much things to do, write it down. And also think, overthinking, what's the next, can you see the next step? Yes, no. If you can't, you can't do anything about it. If you can, do that. Do the next step, next small step. If you feel overwhelmed by something, break it down into steps. What's the next step? Okay, after that's done, then I'll move on to the next one and the next one, the next one. So just focus on the next step. What's next? What's near to me, not what's so far away. Do you know what I mean? But that's everything for today. If you enjoyed this session, next week is going to be another like psychological one. It's going to be, oh, shut up. It's going to be like procrastination, perfectionism, all that kind of stuff, like overcoming perfectionism, and overcoming like when you're actually really harsh on yourself. Like, you know, if you have a routine and you're like, I haven't stuck to this, or like this isn't clean, this isn't like kind of like that sort of behavior, then it's going to be overcoming procrastination. Probably going to do the plan a week as well. Like, I'm going to like probably get you into the best organized state for the week, and show you how to plan properly. So it's all kind of that sort of side of things, like productivity and stuff, but healthy productivity. So if you want to join that, I'll do another story. I think the liking the story is so much easier than the link, so I'll do that again later in the week. If you enjoyed today, please just drop me a DM and tell me how you thought. And if you want a journal code, I think like Friends Fam gets you 20% off. Friends Fam together, 20% off. And the link is in my bio. But honestly, I hope you've learned something. That's all from my therapist. So yeah. But I'll see you hopefully all next week. And thank you so much for coming. Like, you made my day. So yeah, I'll see you later.
Thank you.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for coming so much. Woo.